All right, Vivek. So we are here. We are ready to start this. Well, we've already started this journey. We had our first, session just a couple days ago, but we're going to start diving into some of the actual coaching. So, really, right from the get-go, just want to say thank you for being willing to embark on this experience and really just allow what gets created to come in this experience. So one of the things that I'm going to bring in that's a bit different than even we've done on our calls before is just start us off with a bit of grounding to sort of create the space for ourselves. So really, you're welcome to close your eyes, keep them open, whatever you want to do. And really all I would say is just for both of us just to take a few deep breaths in and out, in and out, in and out. And allow both of ourselves to come into the space, just ready, allowing whatever emerges in the conversation to come, whatever realizations or thoughts or feelings that come for both of us, just that they're welcome in the space. They're welcome to be here, and that even that we're not in a physical space together, that we get to energetically, create this safe space around both of us, this space of trust and love and connection to each other, and allowing that to be this guiding force of the journey that we're going to embark on together. Yeah. So we'll start us off. In our time together tonight, what would you like to explore? What's coming to you?
So I think what I want to explore is being organized. Right? I mean, like I said in the coaching request, there are aspects of my life, like, so there are a lot of things going on in my head which, like, I know either I need to work on or be prepared for, right? And I tend to jump into things I just tend to jump into things without too much of advanced preparation. And when I've looked at it, like, I find that the pro of doing that is that, it's exciting, it's in the moment, it's like you're open for anything that new that can come in, kind of thing, like there's that sense of adventure. But the downside is that sometimes I'm not as prepared as I could be, which takes away from, effectiveness. Like, for example, like, two things happened, I think, in the last couple of days. Like, last night I was very upset about something, because now my wife is going away for some time, and so I'm starting to be more responsible for, like, feeding my son, like our son, and things like that. And last night there was nothing in the fridge, and all I had was some noodles for him, which didn't taste that great. And I felt so bad just being with that. And I was like, I need to be more prepared about these things. And this is something very simple. It's something very basic. But then also, it can also be, like, for example, the other thing that happened today is that my wife is planning to buy a business, and I've sort of been representing her in these conversations, because she has exams and things like that going on. And I could have been more prepared. Let's just say that. Like, so, like, I could have anticipated what was going to happen and be a little more prepared. And so those are the two examples just from the last one day. And so I'm thinking like, what are the opportunities am I missing because that I'm not prepared, right? So that's the mindset shift that I want to bring. It's like, okay, how can I be prepared for the day, which allows for, capitalizing on the opportunities that present themselves, and at the same time allowing some time and freedom for um, whatever life shows up, like whatever life throws up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, and there was quite a bit there, but I can start to sort of at least share some of it back to you.
Yes.
So like at the we'll call it like the foundation of it, like one of the pieces that I'm hearing is like, yeah, I'd like to bring more organization to my life. Here's sort of two examples of what happens when I don't have that preparation. Maybe the meals aren't prepared, or even in this like business arrangement, like I wasn't as prepared for that. So at least, and please feel free to fill in, if there's anything I missed, but like, I sort of hear that piece around, organization, being more prepared, in your day-to-day living. So I got that part. Would there be more that you would want to add to that, or is there anything missing in that reflection?
So the other thing that I mentioned in the coaching request is that I was reading this book called Getting Things Done by David Allen, which I've read it a few times, and every time I read the book, I'm like very excited about, I can get everything organized, right? And I would do the first part, which is about collecting everything and putting them together. But then the most critical part of it is maintaining that, right? It's like making sure that you look at the day ahead or the week ahead and plan accordingly. And that's where sort of things fell apart for me in the past. Like even you and I had this conversation before where we said that, okay, what are the 2 or 3 things that you need to finish the next day? And you think about that the night before, which I did for a few days, and it worked out great. But then I sort of didn't keep up with that practice, right? So I want to look at, okay, maybe there's a different way to look at this, so that the value of that preparation is front and center, so that I can follow through. So that's the other part of it.
Right. So yeah, like what you're speaking to is, well, just in that share is that like, yeah, and there have been times where you've had a better sense of organization, and then it drops off in a sense, like for whatever, like you can stay committed, but then the thing sort of falls out of your mindset, or sort of the day-to-day thinking, and then all of a sudden you're back to sort of square one in a sense.
Yes.
Okay, so got that piece. And there was one other thing that you actually pointed to in the coaching request around this organization piece. Do you recall that?
No, I need to look at what did I send you? Okay. What remind me?
Yeah, so there was a piece around if I become so organized, I'm potentially concerned of like, will that take away from the joy, sort of the freedom of life? Yes. So tell me more about that piece as well.
So actually what I had said was, if I become organized, if there's clarity like that, then 2 things happen, right? One is that because it's so clear, there's no escape but to take action, right? And that can be scary at times, right? So this is like an excuse to myself saying, okay, if I'm not organized, I can always blame that, right? Oh yeah, there's no clarity, or there are too many things going on, even though there might not be, right? And the other piece is like, if the day is too structured, I feel uncomfortable, because like there's this sense of I'm losing my freedom. And so there's sort of like an unconscious resistance to it. It's like, oh, it's too organized, right? I mean,
Right. Yeah. And just, when I'm looking down, it's because I'm taking some notes. Yeah, just so you're aware. When I'm looking down, it's not because I'm not paying attention to you. It's just because I want to make sure that I get some of these points. So,
yes.
Right there, what do you notice about this dynamic? Well, let me just put that to you. Based on what you've shared so far, like, what do you notice about your perspective of organization?
I think there is so there's this tension between wanting to be organized so I can be more effective, and then also not wanting to be organized because, at least in my mind, it takes away some freedom, and it takes away. Actually, I think it's probably because it takes away the excuse not to act. There's a little bit of both. So there's that tension between the two. I think that's what I'm noticing.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and
go ahead.
in my mind, like the thing is that I think there's a way to look at it which accommodates both views, but I can't place my finger on that. Right? I mean, like I'm noticing that both of those extremes are not like, they're not balanced, right? I mean, if it's too much one way or too much the other way, and I'm pretty sure there has to be a middle ground which sort of accommodates both views.
Okay. So, yeah. How does it feel saying that? Like, there might be a middle ground here.
It's a little bit of a relief, like that they're like recognizing that either of those two extremes is not serving me, and that there must be a way which will work better.
Yeah. Okay. So if you look into how you would want this to be in the future, what do you see?
So I think what I would see is that on a day-to-day basis, I have a pulse for what is important for that day and how that leads to what I'm trying to accomplish. There would be some sort of sit-down time where I consciously plan for what's coming up ahead, even if it's for a few minutes, just so that there's a sense of direction.
Okay, so we've covered off like the organizational piece. What about the other side? What would you want that to look like?
So that's what I'm saying. Like, if I know what are the important pieces for a day that need to get done, then I can get those done, and then it leaves me the freedom to allow for the day to unfold for the rest of the time.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay. So how I hear that is that, if we're looking at this from a balanced perspective, that the thing that you would want is that there would be a structure in place so that the most important things are visual and are being completed, so that once that's out of the way, you've got the rest of the time, or however you want to spend that time, to do the things that, like, I'll kind of use the words that you used, bring joy, freedom, that type of thing.
Yes. Yes.
Cool. One thing that I just want to point out there, it kind of just came to me in that moment, is that even in that, there's sort of like a separate, like, it feels like there's a separation. Like, okay, you have to do the work things, and then like the joy, and I realize I may have put those words in the space, but like that joy, that freedom gets to come afterwards. And I just want to be clear, like, would that be fair to say, in a sense that, like, I totally realize I'm putting this into the space, but like, I guess what I'm present to is like, it feels like one part of it is like, okay, I get all the work things done, and then I get to experience the joy, the freedom, the things that I want to do. What do you hear in that?
No, it's no, I don't hear it like that. The reason being, like, if there are certain things that need to be done to move things forward, if they don't get done, and then it's like what's a good example? So right, so let's say something needs to be done, but it doesn't get done, and let's say a friend says, okay, let's go out for lunch, and I agree to that, because that's a place for connection, that's a place for something unexpected to come out. But if it's at the expense of what I had either, like, in my mind is important to get done, then that undone thing takes away from the experience of that connection.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that makes sense. That's like
yeah. No.
Like, I'm not saying that okay, what needs to get done is not joyful. That's not what I'm implying. But what I'm implying is that if the things that are important, they don't get done, then it creates regret later, right? Oh, this was important, but it didn't get done. And so that's why I put it in that order.
Yeah, and again, I totally realize that I may have put that, like, oh, that seems like that's not joyful in the space, so like I'm gonna own that piece for sure. But I get it, like I get where you're looking here. So let's sort of like come back to like the vision of this, because there was definitely something there. So really coming back to the heart of it, the thing that you spoke to, it was like, there's got to be a middle ground here. There's got to be a middle ground between organization and sort of the freedom, the joy of life, right? Sort of the flexibility, so to speak.
Flexibility, yeah.
And was that kind of where you were, like, would that be fair to say, like, that's sort of like, again, I'll sort of pull back. What do you think of that? Like, when you come to that place of like, there's got to be this balance, how does that feel to you?
So the balance piece of it feels like more joyful in the sense, like, it's it's more like so the analogy that's coming to my mind is like the flow of a river, right? So there are the banks, and within those banks the river is flowing freely.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's what comes to my mind, is that, okay, there is yeah I think that's that.
Okay. And so if we look at just that you shared, that like there's this free flow, this sort of like river, yeah, this sort of free flowing river in this process. What does that look like when it comes to the structures of your life? Like if we looked at a day in your life going forward in the future, how would this look to you?
So the way it would look is at the start of the day, I would know what are the important pieces that absolutely must get done that day. So some of the priorities of the day. And it would allow for uh, time to just be and like, yeah.
Okay. Great. Um, so we get a sense of where you would want this to look in the future. You know, just the priorities would be established so that, you know, then there would just be time to be. What's getting in the way of that now?
What's getting in the way of that now? I think that there are certain parts where it's not like I haven't sat down and clarified what the priority is or what the next steps are. Um, like it's just like a cloud in the mind. Like for example, the thing about meals, right? I mean, okay, I have this sense that, oh, if I sit down and just plan for meals for a week, then I can plan for what groceries to buy and stuff like that. And so then the day before, I would know what am I doing the next day, right? I mean, this is like, I mean, it's silly example, but I think it's symptomatic, or it's like representative of what is happening in other parts of life also. It's so many times I'll be like, when I get up in the morning, that's when I'm thinking of, okay, what can I, make for breakfast, or what can I send to school, like send my son to school with. And that's a little late to plan, and because the ingredients might not be there, or whatever. Like it's a little bit of a thing. Um, yeah. Or the other example is like if I know there's an important conversation coming up, whether it's with my boss at work, or with the project that I'm doing, that I know I'm going to meet this person about it. So to have a little more, like to sit down and just clarify my own thoughts of what I want out of that conversation. Where do I want that conversation to go? What information do I need ahead of, like what information do I need ahead of time to be prepared for it? Like, so those kind of things. Uh, yeah. Yeah.
So a couple of the things that are getting in the way, it sounds like, is that, you know, that you could almost, like, you know, sort of that last minute preparation puts you into sort of like this reactive place in a sense. Like you're kind of, you're having to react to sort of what's in front of you because there wasn't that earlier preparation or that earlier like brainstorming that was happening in a sense.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So from where we've explored so far, what's calling to you for us to look at going forward in the rest of our conversation?
So to me, it's like what is becoming clear is that if I sit down and just look at the week ahead of what is coming in, or the day ahead, what is coming up, then it's a matter of putting maybe some sort of time on the calendar to prepare for that, right? I mean, it's like, yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, it sounds like something's there, in terms of like a step that you could take.
Yeah.
Can you share that again? Like, what would that be for you? It sounds like you are seeing something there.
Like, for example, okay, so for example, I have a meeting coming up. It might be this Sunday, or it might be in a couple of weeks, with somebody where we're going to talk about, introducing some of the programs that I want to introduce into their organization, right? So before that call happens, I need time on my calendar, which is just to sit down and, in my like, clarify, not just in my head, but I think what would serve me better is to probably just write down, like, or type up what do I think, where we stand, and what is the path forward in my mind, so it's clear for me what am I driving towards.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, yeah. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? I mean, it's like,
Totally, it makes sense to me in terms of the
yeah.
conversation, in terms of the conversation that you have on Sunday. Like, great idea. It sounds like you see something there. And just the one place I check in with you right now is how is this conversation going so far? How are you feeling with where we're at?
So I think, like, the conversation so far has been like, I've uncovered something an action step that I can take. Okay, the place that I'm not trusting myself is like the follow through on that. It's like, okay, will I be able to? Okay, maybe I'll do it for the next, whatever things that are coming up in 1 week. What happens the week after? It's so that's where I'm still doubting myself that, oh, can I make this sustainable? Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for speaking it. So, being that so first of all, I totally hear you. Like, thanks for being willing to like share what's true to you in terms of like the long-term direction with this beautiful place that you've just uncovered for yourself. So that may be the place for us to explore for the rest of the conversation, if that's what you feel is sort of there for you. And if you're open to it, let's put that practice in place right here that you talked about for the week, for that conversation on Sunday. So you've got an action step in place right now to sort of put in, that you're ready for. Does that feel good to sort of just anchor to that action step to start?
Yes.
Cool. So what is it? Like, you've got this conversation on Sunday. What's the action step that you need to take there to be prepared for it?
So what I need to do is put some time on my calendar, like 15 minutes, and those 15 minutes are to gather my thoughts about what do I want like, how do I want this conversation to go? And if there are any like materials that I need to collect for it, or like, do any kind of research on the person or on the organization that'll make me feel more prepared for it. Like that, okay, I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm dealing with a little bit more. Right? I think that's the action step.
Cool. So it sounds like you're clear on what's needed. When will you put that time on your calendar? Like, do you have a time slot that you already know of?
So I think I'm going to do it Sunday around noon. I think that's the time I have. Because this conversation is Sunday in the evening,
Yeah.
later in the evening. Actually, I got an email earlier today saying that it might not happen this Sunday. It might be pushed out, but we'll see. But I still want to put this time on the calendar this weekend, so that in case it happens either Sunday evening or in 2 weeks, I still have some clarity around it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So by when? When will you have that? When will you have that 15-minute slot completed? Like when will you have actually done what you wanted to do?
Yeah. Sunday, I think Sunday 1 o'clock.
By 1 o'clock or at one
By one
o'clock?
o'clock.
Okay,
By one
so
o'clock.
by one
Yeah.
o'clock. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. How does it feel to put that down? To actually like have that concrete spot in your calendar that you know you're committed to?
Mixed feelings. So a part of me is like, oh, great, this is great progress, and there's clarity, and a part of me is like, okay, we'll see how this score comes out, like how this turns out. Yeah, there's a little bit of like, I don't know if it's nervousness or what it is, but there's like a little bit of a discomfort associated with committing to something, which I don't know where it's coming from, but that's what I feel. It's like it's both of those things.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to just sit with that for a second? And again, you don't have to, but like maybe even if you feel sort of called to it, just sit with that and see what might be underneath that discomfort.
It's more like oh shit, I have to do this now. So, like it's a, I mean, it's like it's just like the sense that I get is like I set a trap for myself and I'm walking into it in that way. But I don't know where that's coming from. I mean, yeah.
Well,
It's
and
okay. I think it's okay.
I'm just curious, like, is making these types of commitments a usual thing for you?
No, it's not. Um, yeah, so that's one thing that I yeah, that's one thing I have a challenge with, is to commit to saying, like, to others or to myself. Actually, it's easier to commit to others and I can hold that, but to make a commitment to myself and say, okay, I will get this done by this time, those things tend to fall apart. So um, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, we've got about can't even remember now, but we've got about, I think we got about 31 minutes or so, 30 minutes we'll call it. And
Okay.
there's something here in potentially
Yes.
exploring the challenge to commit.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
also had mentioned, this idea of what I have fears about, like, this being a long-term thing that, like,
Yes.
yes, it's easy to sort of say, hey, I'll make this commitment for this one time, but like, will that be sustainable over the rest of my life? So, and I'm sure there's some connection there, but
Yeah.
and I'm being wordy about it, but like, would you like to explore one of those topics more for the rest of our time, or is there something else that you see?
I think so. The one that I get pulled to is about this, making this making commitments, especially to myself, and keeping commitments to myself. I tend to shy away from making commitments to myself and then holding them, like both.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay. Yeah, and what do you like? Do you see sort of a connection between like the making the commitments and the challenge to commit that you just spoke to?
So say that again, like the connection between making commitments to myself and holding myself, like, or committing to a long term. Is that what you're saying?
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably the same thing. Like,
Could be.
could be.
Yeah.
They sound like the same thing. Because
Yeah.
like you know, like you say, okay, you know, like you just did, okay, when will this be done by? So okay, we'll get this done, because in my mind it's very clear, okay, it needs to be done by this time. But then you're not going to be there in a few weeks, and then what happens? Then it's I need to make that commitment to myself. So I think it's I think it's the same thing. So yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, thanks for speaking to it. And I mean, really what's been your relationship to commitments in your life? What are your thoughts about commitment?
Um, if I look at my behavior, like in the terms of like things that I've done, I'm afraid of commitment. Like, I'm afraid to put a line in the, like, put a line saying, okay, this will get done by this time, or this is what I'm committing to. If I'm, or this is where I'll show up, kind of thing. I'm afraid to do that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is some sense of like, um, like what I'm noticing as I say that is that somewhere I'm not honoring myself. Right? I mean, if I cannot keep my word, then what's the, like, what's the substance behind it? Like, what's the, yeah, like, it's like the question I'm asking myself is like, what kind of a person am I that I'm not keeping my word to, even to myself? Right? I mean, it's like, um, yeah.
Mm-hmm. What does it mean about you if you don't keep your word?
Um, that my word is my word, and by extension, I am not valuable to myself. It sounds very weird, but like that's, yeah, like as if I'm not valuing myself to honor my own word.
Mm-hmm.
Or I mean, I think that's, yeah, that's what's coming up.
So it would make sense then that you're afraid of, like, it would make sense then, like at the core, well, I mean, I'll put it to you. What do you notice about that first part that you said about being afraid of commitment, given what you just said?
Like, I mean, it makes sense that is the result of this, right? Uh, yeah.
Right. So, and I'll bring it back to it. Like, what happens when you can make a commitment? Like, well, really, just like what do you tell yourself when you don't follow through on a commitment?
So I haven't really paid too much attention on it, but most of the times, like there's a pinch that, oh, I said that I will do this, but I didn't do it. And the next thing that comes is like, oh, well, okay. Wait a minute, it's like, okay, let's move on, kind of thing. And so there's yeah.
But that's interesting, right? Because what you just shared is that on the surface, I didn't follow through on the commitment. Well, that's okay. Like, it's all right.
Like there's an out that I'm giving myself, right? I mean, by saying, it's okay, right?
But what you just shared previously was like, by not making a commitment, I'm not valuing myself. So while on the surface, it's like, it's okay. That thing, I didn't follow through. That's sort of like the coping aspect of it. Underneath it, there's a much different story that's happening.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm not valuable.
Yeah.
Do you see that?
Yeah.
So as a result of that, what happens to future commitments?
The same story, right? I mean, it's like until that story changes about I'm valuable or not valuable, I think the struggle is going to continue. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for sure. Like, yes, the same pattern might play out. And you also said that, like, you're afraid. You're afraid of the commitment. So what happens when you're afraid of commitment?
It's like so I'm afraid of a commitment because somewhere it's like if I make a commitment, then it'll reinforce that belief that, oh, I'm not valuable. But yeah. But if I don't make a commitment, then I don't have to look at it, right? I mean, that's like it's like the safety wall. Okay, if you don't look, then right? That's very interesting, huh?
And you've spoken to it. What do you see as sort of the path forward with regards to commitment in your life? How you create commitments going forward?
So I'm thinking out loud here. It's like the more commitments I can create and make and follow through on, the more I'm sort of consciously or unconsciously telling myself that I am valuable or I am important to myself. I think that's the yeah. So while I've been afraid of commitments, I think making and keeping commitments is a like it's a tangible way out of this thing about, oh, I'm not valuable. Otherwise, like, okay, I can say, okay, I'm valuable, but then it's just words, right? I mean, it's not solid in that way. If I just try to tell myself, oh no, I'm valuable, but it doesn't feel very grounded in that. Yeah.
So what would then have to be the new belief or the new way of being so that there is that groundedness around how you see yourself and how you see commitments?
The new way of being will need to be like, I'm careful what I commit to, and then whatever I commit to, I follow through. Like, not just say yes for the sake of saying yes, but really meaning it and following through on it.
Okay. How does that feel?
Yeah. It feels empowering and scary at the same time. Right? I mean, it's like, it's empowering because this idea of that, oh, I can be that person who keeps his word. Right? So that's very empowering. That, oh, yes, this is sort of like tangible for me. And it's scary at the same time because it's different from what the way I've been for all these years, right? For a significant portion of my life. So it feels like a significant change, and that's what makes it both exciting and scary at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
May I share something with you?
Yes.
So I love where you're looking in this, and I'll just kind of put it out point blank. It kind of feels like a fix to how things have been. If I've been not committed and afraid of commitment, well, the way to get past that is to be selective in my commitments and follow through. And again,
Yes.
totally nothing wrong with that. Like, it makes sense. The only place I would have you look at is, well, what happens if you don't follow through? Then what?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I put it out, it's like an unconscious pressure that, oh, you better follow through, or else you're just proving the same thing that you've believed all this time, right? So there's tension there.
Mm-hmm. So the place I would offer you, just, we've got 12 minutes or so. But the place I'd offer you is like, okay, what wouldn't be a fix? If all was right in the world, if all you've been like, if everything about you is whole and there didn't have to be a fix about this, what would be like the way of being, or like the way that you'd get to sort of play with this that would still be the empowering way forward?
Um, I, 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 okay. Let me see if I can say it the way I'm thinking about it. Is the way to be would be to be genuine. Like, if I see that I'm not going to be able to keep a commitment, to be open about it, both to myself and to whoever I made the commitment to, and not tie it to my sense of myself, or my, like, not make it a question of identity.
Mm.
That, like, I mean, sometimes there are, like, sometimes there's a genuine reason that I don't follow through on something, and sometimes I'm just afraid to follow through. So if I'm in touch with what that is, then I can move past it, and rather than make it about, oh, I'm the kind of person who follows through or who doesn't follow through, or I'm the kind of person who, who has value when he follows through on his commitments and doesn't if he doesn't, kind of thing. Yeah. That feels much more that feels much more relaxed.
Yeah. Well, what do you notice again if we look at this aspect of commitment? What do you notice about like being genuine, being open, being relaxed? How does it feel about like just thinking about that concept of commitment in your life from that place?
Ease, right? There's much more ease around it. Like there isn't this pressure that, oh, like if I don't follow through, then I'm a bad person or whatever. Like, I mean, it's just like, okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So ease, one of the breakthroughs that we've talked about creating in this experience. So from this place, looking at commitment, from being genuine, open with ease, what do you see as, do you see anything to practice, over the next week? Any places that you would want to play, experiment with?
I think what I would like to do is just be more present to how I'm feeling about certain things. It, I don't know if like, yeah, like just checking in with myself. Okay, what do I really like? Why am I really committing or not committing? And being clear in my mind about what how I feel towards a certain thing. I don't know how I would translate that into a practice, which is like, I mean, like as I'm speaking about this, and okay, I'll check in with myself, but okay, what does that look like? Is not clear to me. Like,
Yeah, would you like some support around that?
yes, please.
Well, one of the places that you talked about in the beginning was like starting your day off with that list of priorities. And that might be a great place to practice right there. Is like, hey, do I actually want to commit to this thing? Do I want to commit to this thing that feels important on the list, or do I not want to? That might be the place to bring that exact energy too. Does that feel aligned?
Yeah. Yes. That was.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, there's kind of two practices in that. The first one would be making the commitment to do that list.
To make list, yes.
So, what do you see there as a practice?
So, I think I want to go back to what you and I had discussed on a previous call. It's like, okay, the night before, I have a list of, sort of the 3 things that I want to do the next day, that I commit to doing the next day.
Okay.
And while I'm making that list the night before, have the same check-in about, okay, is it really a priority? Do I really want to commit to it? And am I not committing to it because I'm afraid of something, or yeah.
Cool. Okay. So, how many times do you want to practice that, creating the list and doing that check-in with yourself over the next week?
So today is Thursday. I think I want to do it till Tuesday of next week and see how it goes. So 4 days.
Sure.
And then from there, we'll see like how that goes. If I run into issues or something, then we can talk about it next time.
Okay, cool. So the commitment is 4 days, and then maybe potentially we get some bonus days in there as well.
Yes.
4 days plus. Okay, cool. So we'll start to kind of wind down here. Did you get what you needed in terms of our conversation today?
I was genuinely surprised about how we went from this thing about commitment and making commitments and being afraid of commitments to this part of being at ease. Like, okay, that's got nothing to do with me, right? I mean, as in like the essence of me. it's a trait, but it's not a defining feature kind of thing. Like it's not that, oh, if I do this, then I'm like this kind of a person. So how quickly that shift happened was surprising to me, because yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, beautiful realization around that, the identity piece. Yeah, great work around that. It was really, really cool to see that sort of come unearthed from where we went. Was there anything missing, disempowering, or incomplete in the conversation?
No, I was going to mention something else. It's just like, after I sent you that coaching request, I was like, oh, this will be like a like where what I was anticipating where I will end up is this all this mental pressure about planning and getting organized and getting all my ducks in the row. But I'm very happy where we ended up with this sense of ease that, okay, there's, yes, there are things that I can do to be more organized, but at the same time, it doesn't need to be a pressure or a mental load kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna give some acknowledgement to that afterwards for sure. But yeah, I really, it's awesome that you shared that. Like just, hey, what I was expecting to come in with, and where I was like, oh, we're gonna get this pressure that like we didn't end up there. We ended up somewhere different. Yeah. So cool. It's cool to hear that. So good to complete here.
Yeah. Yes.
Awesome. Anything that you would like to be acknowledged for?
No. No.
No.
I mean, you can acknowledge me for whatever you see, but no, there isn't anything specific.
Well, take a look. I mean, just what qualities did you bring to our conversation or outside of our conversation, but like, what qualities would you like to be acknowledged for?
Not being stuck with my preconceived notions and being willing to move on. Right? I think.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got a few areas I want to acknowledge you for. One is trust. Really want to acknowledge you for the trust that you're bringing to this space. That even like we look at the coaching request, right? Like you brought a request, there was a lot of specificity in it, and then we went in a totally different direction. And you at least I feel the trust in that, like you're open to where the experience goes, and that like something is going to emerge from this. That's an amazing quality to have, and like the space that creates for us to be here together. By you giving trust to me, it allows me to just like take us off in different directions, or try different things, and that's all because of the being that you're bringing to the conversation. So I really want to acknowledge you for that piece. I really want to acknowledge you again, kind of for that flexibility that you're bringing in, like being able to maneuver. We went in a few different pathways, and yet we've arrived at this place in the conversation that requires flexibility. I see that for you in how you are in life as well, that you're open, you're just open and flexible to the moment. The last place I really want to acknowledge you for is your heart. The heart of being willing to like look at what's underneath the commitment, what's truly there, what's been that thing that's been holding you back. Because I have no doubts, the organizational strategies, you have that brilliance, you can figure this stuff out. It's no problem. But what's underneath these things that you've been holding on to, that requires heart and vulnerability to look there, so that we can create new pathways, new ways of breakthroughs that is truly what's meaningful here. So great work.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Absolutely. I'm gonna stop the recording here, and we'll continue our conversation.